definitely did not want me to be doing music type shit. And it was crazy how it just kind of like happened. Like I just met a couple people from Texas State.
They push against it or something?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Because it's like they both got like master degrees. Like they're like, my family's like educated or educators. So when it's like I come along and I'm like, I want to be a rapper, they was like, what the fuck wrong with you? You know what I mean? Like they were not feeling that. But yeah, man. So I was like, you know, at first I was kind of like, okay, yeah. So it's like you don't go to school, get your degree, go work and do this for somebody else, whatever the case.
And do that on the side.
Yeah, right on the side. And I was like, at first I believed them too. I was like, you right. Like, let me just push this shit to the side. I remember like when I first started, man, it was so tough because I was doing free shows, couldn't get people to come to them. It was the craziest shit ever. And it's like walking distance from campus. I was trying, and I was putting out little songs here and there, or whatever. And I remember it all kind of changed. Like it was like I had a birthday, and I don't know what made it different. Maybe it was my birthday or however it played out, but it went from I'm in a building with the capacity was maybe 20, couldn't get nothing, but I'm looking at the other artists in the room type shit. And then next thing you know, it's like I got trying to like 50, 60 people trying to pack into a 20 person space, like just to see me. And it just kind of took off from there. But it was definitely, it was rocky at first. That shit used to be funny back in the day.
What college was that?
Texas State University in San Marcos.
San Marcos?
Yeah.
Oh, what's up,
San Marcos, man, I'm telling you, yeah, come on now. Come on now. What was it? Eat 'em up. Come on now. Oh, yeah. That was different, man. I have to say the artists in there were built different, you know? And it took me a while to find my identity because, you know, it was a lot of people that sounded like other people, you know?
Let's talk about that, man. Mm-hmm. I think that, you know, since we got another artist on this channel, man, I really don't feel like that's something that we've covered, you know, very well on the channel. So we'll definitely take the opportunity to do that, man.
Yeah.
Describe what it was like, and you know, your journey in finding your identity as an artist.
Yeah, I feel like it was tough at first because I feel like the as an artist, your biggest opponent is your own ego and the ability to realize yourself. You know, so people will come and say, man, I got this going on and check this out, or this is my music is fire, whatever the case. And that might not be the case. You know, every time that I've ever made a song, I always thought this is the best thing that I've done so far. And it takes some time and learning to realize, hey, there are places where you could grow in that. So it took me times trying to make songs where I was trying to sound like Andre 3000 or trying to sound like whoever else, to where it comes to a point where it's like people aren't listening to you to sound like somebody else. You know what I mean? Otherwise, they would just listen to that person. So I feel like my biggest thing is like growing into who I wanted to be. I feel like it just came from life experience. You know what I mean? Life experience and clarity. You know, I feel like you get lost in, you know, I'm trying, I saw so-and-so do this. So if I do this like them and I do this like them, you get lost. So I think that was probably one of the biggest growing pains. I forgot the question now. I started
your journey, you know what I'm saying? Your journey in discovering who you were.
Oh, so my biggest thing, yeah, man. So I started off, one of my biggest things was I was trying to figure out how I could come up with the hardest punchlines. Right, so I think
you came in on the punchline.
Oh yeah, I was the one like trying to do flips.
I know that was a Ludacris influence. Yeah, that was definitely.
Oh yeah, man. Dude, I'm telling you, man. Look, man. I'm thinking, what was that? What was the song he used to have?
So many.
Smoking on that sticky, this that fire. Yeah. What was that? Whatever it was. I was thinking of different stuff like blueberry yum yum. Yeah. So I'm like, man, I'm listening to that. Like my biggest thing at first, I wasn't too concerned with melodies. My thing is, I want to say stuff to where it's like when I say
the hardest shit. You want people to hang on to your last word.
When he said, you remember when he said, that's what I wanted to have. Yeah. And then I realized that that's cool in certain certain instances, right? So when I first started out and I was coming as a punchline rapper, as a bar rapper, and I would go to different parties or different clubs and do performances rather than, you know, speakeasies. I'm up there trying to spit bars and people looking at me like, what the fuck? Like, ain't nobody trying to hear you give punchlines. I'm trying to turn up and jump, right? So it went from me doing nothing but bars to where then it was like, okay, let me try and add some melodic appeal.
So right? You got so basically you kind of got influenced by your audience. Your audience had a big impact
in the beginning, most definitely.
Your approach to being an artist.
That was my biggest. You know, I don't want to say I regret it because I learned a lot from it. But one of my biggest things was as I was starting, being too influenced by the people around me. And I feel like that was what got in the way of me finding out the way that I sound now. You know, and this is again from 2020 or from 2015. And now we're here in 2020. And I'm finally like, ooh, this is my sound for a fact, because I know that this is what I like to make versus let me see what other people want to hear me do. You see what I'm saying?
Now, talking about your sound, that means a lot of stuff to a lot of artists.
That does, yeah.
Some artists might say, I just come into the booth, I spit my shit, and that's my sound. To my understanding, you do have, a background in engineering your own stuff. And I think any artist that's his own engineer, defining your sound means a lot more to you because you're so much more hands-on in the way, in the outcome.
Right.
So you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so one of the things that I would definitely say is, as an artist, you have to educate yourself of the processes that are happening while you're in the studio. Because if you're sitting there and have no idea what's going on and you're just waiting for somebody to engineer your track, then you have no idea what you just did besides your raw take, right? So one of the things, I started off recording with this guy named Eisenberg from Left Right Pro Audio Studios. And I had already kind of had a small background in engineering. And so I would just sit beside him for my entire session. I didn't have a bunch of my homies with me in the back smoking and carrying on. I was sitting right there with him, like pen and paper. He's telling me about compression. I'm learning about compression. He's telling me about all the different audio suites, the things that go into your audio chain. And I'm looking at it and I'm taking those, whether it be in my phone or whether it be in my notebook. And I'm trying to learn so that now I'm not sitting there like, and someone's like, hey, Reeze.
You was blessed like a motherfucker, man.
For real.
You actually had somebody that broke for like, and you was just paying him for studio time.
Yeah, well, I also had a little, so he wasn't having to explain to me how everything worked. So I already had a little bit of an understanding. So it's more or less like, okay, so I'm watching, so you're putting the EQ first before you do the compression. And it's like, oh, okay, so why? So it's not like I'm asking how to use EQ or compression. It's not more or less like the how he's doing it, but the why you're doing it in that order. Do you see what I'm saying?
I mean, I'm just saying the fact that,
he's
explaining it.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
but a lot of people don't ask, man. Like, that's how I got my job at the Green Elephant. Like, there were so many people who wanted to have that spot and just didn't ask. I literally just, like, the current engineer, when he was there, he's micing up a drum kit, and I was learning how to do it. So I said, hey, man, can I try and do that? And I'm performing in, like, an hour. And I just wanted to learn, so I just asked before I went on stage, and he let me do it. And so when he saw my, techniques, he was like, what do you know about this? I said, really nothing. I'm trying to learn. And from that's how I got the job I've had for the past 5 years, So
right
if you ask, you shall receive. That's probably my biggest thing. Anything I had a question on, I asked, worst thing I'm going to do is tell you no.
True. So, and having some good questions helps.
And man, yeah, if you don't know what you don't know, that's a motherfucker right there. Yeah. But that's my thing, man. I definitely tried to learn the processes that go into it. So once we get there, then I can understand. So if I took it somewhere else, like now I get my engineering done through this guy from North Carolina. His name is Nick Nash. So I go to Nick Nash and I say, hey, like when it comes to the tuning on this or whatever the case, I can better articulate what I want my sound to be. You know what I mean? So I think it was definitely a learning process at first.
Let's talk about projects, man.
Okay.
We've got Bad Guy season on its way.
Yeah, absolutely.
But this is following a line, you know what I'm saying? So what was your first project coming out as
Okay, so my first project that came out in 2015. It was called I.E. The Beginning, and it stood for Infinite Entertainment. And I was going to try and get like my whole business and brand started off of that. And it was crazy because at that point in time, I had really just barely started to get any kind of traction at all. And it was funny because that same, like the next day is when Drake released If You're Reading This It's Too Late out of nowhere.
Yeah.
So people was fucking with my shit on the first day, crazy. Like, oh man, like Reeze, he just dropped shit. Y'all check out my boy. As soon as he dropped that shit, it was like nothing happened. I was like, damn, I'm not where I need to be yet. You know what I mean? And so then after that,
were people drawing like similarities with your project and the Drake Crunch project, or was it just a matter of like, damn, they came too close together?
I think so. I think it was they came too close together. Like, just being a light-skinned nigga in general. Like growing up, back before I had the long hair, everybody said I was Drake or looked like Drake, whatever the case. But my biggest thing was it happened at the same time, and I knew that at that point in time, I had to be real with myself. I did not have the value in my product to be able to compete with that. Does that make sense? I'm still just starting at that point, and I hadn't put enough hours.
You're doing your artist development.
Yeah, and so at that point in time, I didn't have I felt as though with
I
him.
heard Akon say that he could have signed Drake, but he didn't because when he heard Drake for the first time, he sounded like Eminem.
Oh damn, yeah, but that's the thing. You know what I mean? That's the thing. So I
mean, artists got to develop. I mean, artists is like Final Four and Drake is not.
And people feel like they can't admit that.
It's not mixtape Drake.
Yeah, and people can't. I feel like people have a hard time, and I feel like that's where the artist ego comes into play. Like you have to understand that there might be a period of growth you need to go through before you can get to a point to where your music transcends popularity. You know what I mean? Like for example, people will listen to something that Drake or another artist might put out off of the muscle of I know of this person, so I'm going to see what they have to say. Versus I could show somebody my music who's never heard it before, and now I have a fan off the muscle of this was really good, regardless as if I know him or didn't know him beforehand. It's like, yo, this is good music, and I like that, you know. So I think people need to have patience with themselves when it comes to stuff like that for sure.
Right on. So first project, man, what was the lesson takeaway from the first project?
Oof. Don't do projects that big. It was like a 10 or like 15 song project, and I funded it all with like my refund money from school. My parents were so pissed, man. Oh my goodness. I spent it was like maybe $1,500, but almost like $2,000 in a project. And it was like, they were like, so what you gonna do about your books? I was like, I'm gonna figure it out. I had found out how to get them hoes online because I wanted to do the music. Right, something right. I was like, I couldn't tell them because it's like I didn't want them to know that I was doing music like that. So it's like,
so it was serious. Like they was really, really, really trying to go against. I mean, has that changed over the years?
Oh, for sure.
They kind of bought into
when they came.
My son is.
Oh yeah, when they came to my first live show in Dallas, and they saw the amount of people there to support like me specifically, and they saw the crowd like.
So your moms and your pops came out to one.
Oh, they come to my shows a lot. Actually, that's the crazy part. I'm really thankful for that because a lot. Man. Like it started off, man. I remember there was a point in time. My dad, he basically like we were out there with our family in Mississippi, and when I was first starting, I knew I had to go through the growth, so I wasn't telling people about it unless it was anyone else besides my family, right?
You wanted to polish yourself up a little bit before you.
Yeah, like you know man, I don't need my auntie and them knowing. Yeah, oh man. I remember, we were in Mississippi, and basically we were sitting there at like some kind of family gathering, and he's like, all right, so go ahead and tell them what you've been up to, Reeze. And they're like, Reeze? What do you mean? And I'm like, no, you didn't. I was like, well, so yeah, I'm in school and I've been doing music. They're like, oh, let me hear it. I'm like, I'm lying and shit. I don't have it on my phone. I can't. I knew it wasn't for them, you know what I mean? I'm making music for people who are in my age category, you know what I mean? It's like, I'm talking to my 40-year-old auntie and stuff. I'm like, I ain't trying to show them that. So it definitely, it took some time for my parents to get on board. But when they did, you know, my mom, she was iffy supportive at first, kind of like, if that's what you want to do, baby, you know, that kind of thing. But when they came to my first show and they saw the people out there singing my songs, all the people like watching and shit, recording people who I didn't know coming up and stuff, like, who is this? Then they're like, okay, and I got my dad like on camera, like on the side of the stage, like okay, and after that,
I know they was probably turned like that's my boy.
Yeah, I'm telling you, he telling me about it. Hey man, you know Reeze, you know what I'm saying? Oh, you ain't know about? Oh man, that's my boy, that's my son now. You know, after that it changed up. So, and it was cool. It definitely was no ill intent there. Like I understand, like for you to come from where they came from to see your son doing music, it's like okay, so everybody else does music, but I think once they saw the difference between me and everybody else, as far as the amount of work I put in behind the scenes into my stage performance, the due diligence that I try to do to make my music better and refine myself, I think they bought into it after that. They definitely understood where I was coming from and that this was not a phase or a fad or something, and this is what I'm bought into.
Right on, right on.